Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey!
Marshall, how are we today?
Doing fantastic. Sitting here in front of my wonderful cathedral.
I know why you chose this, and we can't spoil it yet because I think we would truly spoil it if we tell them immediately. But it is a lovely picture of a cathedral that you took this picture yourself, didn't you?
Yes, I did take this picture. This is, I think it's called the Mesquita in Spain. The Romans built it as a temple. The Moors showed up, put a little Islamic flair to it, and then in the middle of it, once the Spanish took back over, in the middle of the mosque is now a Gothic cathedral.
Amazing.
So everything's still there: the Roman columns, the Islamic arches, and the Gothic architecture.
Yeah, just amazing. It's beautiful.
Yes, and in the 700s, it would hold 50,000 worshipers.
Oh my goodness!
So it's a pretty good crowd for a service.
Yes, that's twice the size of my town. So
everybody's going to church twice. All right, so we're asking a pretty big question today.
Yeah. Why are your people here? That's what we want to get people thinking about. And
I can actually hear a manager we ask, I look at the manager and go, "Why are your people here?" And then the manager goes, "I have no idea," and then he quits. Just I don't know, and I'm not sure why I'm here.
I gave this as a handout to a management team recently, and somebody misread it to say, "Why are you people here?" took it really accusatory.
Oh yeah, you dropped the R. Why are you people here?
Why are your people here? That's the question.
Okay.
And we've got a little story to illustrate this. It goes right along with your cathedral. I think you'll probably tell a little bit more about your cathedral here in a minute. But this is a story that goes back to the 1670s. Sir Christopher Wren, he's an architect of many buildings in London and in England. I think he's even given credit for some of the College of William and Mary in Virginia. But he designed St. Paul's Cathedral. So you have probably seen St. Paul's, even if you don't know it, because it shows up in the Feed the Birds song in Mary Poppins, the Disney version of Mary Poppins. But at any rate, there's a very old story told about Sir Christopher Wren that he, according to tradition, he suited up as a commoner and went and toured the construction site as they were building St. Paul's Cathedral. And so he walked around and saw the workers, and the stone cutters were cutting stone, and he went and asked the first one that he saw, "What are you doing?" And the stone cutter stopped, turned around and looked at him and said, "I'm cutting stone," and then turned around and went back to work. There's a guy a little farther on down. He's working maybe a little bit harder and not super engaged in his work, but he's working maybe a little bit harder. And Sir Christopher Wren says, "What are you doing?" And this stone cutter turns around and says, "I'm making about 5 pence a day. Not too bad." And then goes back to work. And then he hears this noise, and it's over in the corner. And it's in a dark place. Frankly, it's a place where, nobody in when the church is finished is really even going to see it. He's working on parts that are going to be covered and hidden. And this guy is going to town. Like there's sweat on his face. There's sweat on his back. He's vigorously chiseling out this stone and just absolutely going bonkers doing his work. And Sir Christopher Wren walks up and says, "So what are you doing?" And this guy stops and turns around, has a little bit of a glow on his face. And he says, "I'm helping Sir Christopher Wren build a magnificent cathedral to the glory of God." And then he gets back to work.
Whoa.
So that's the story. So Mike, I play around with this when I've used it with my clients, but the first question is, what do these 3 stonecutters have in common?
Well, they're all at the job site.
Yeah, they made it in today.
They showed it up. They showed up today.
They did.
They're all doing the job, right?
Yeah.
So you can't take that away from them. Yeah.
Right.
Did everybody show up and did everybody get to work? Yes and yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
What changes is the level of engagement, right? The level of commitment to the craft.
Right.
And
right.
we see this all the time, right? Right. And in one of our previous videos, we talked about discretionary effort.
Yes.
And so the first 2 stonecutters are doing what's expected, but nothing beyond that.
Right.
The third stonecutter, who sees a greater purpose to his work, he's giving up discretionary effort, a little extra speed, a little extra quality, a little extra care that you can't pay money for, that only comes through a purpose motive.
Yeah, you can't pay a guy enough to make him work like that. And in fact, there's been some research that sort of points to the opposite, that you pay a person enough and they actually trail off on their level of work. So it's not about that. It's about that P word you said, purpose. So this is, maybe you might even want to pause the podcast to, just ask our listening audience to do that here in a second, both of you, to pause the podcast and just sort of write down on a piece of paper, each of the people that work for you, your direct reports, where do they show up on a continuum? And on the left-hand side, you've got a pair of hands. They're just showing up, doing the task. But all the way on the right-hand side are the people that are completely engaged. They're showing that discretionary effort that you just can't buy. We have a friend, Chris Hunsicker, who, he says, you can buy my hands. You might even be able to buy my head a little bit, but you can't buy my heart. And this guy who's completely engaged, they're all in. So maybe, pause the podcast and write down those names. And so here's the place to pause. Beep. Okay, great.
That was very 1980s voicemail.
Right.
Pause. And I've actually, when I do this exercise, right, you've got the pair of hands to completely engaged continuum.
Yeah.
And so many times the managers will start to fill in the names. Like, okay, here's Bob. He's barely breathing. He can fog a mirror, but he comes in every day. And then you got Sally, like, if I need a volunteer to stay late, or she knows something's going on without even asking, that person's all in for me. And so and they'll put the names along the continuum.
Right.
And very often it makes that lovely bell curve that we always talk about. You've got a few super engaged, a couple pair of hands, and this whole group kind of in the middle at varying stages of engagement.
Yeah. And I would challenge the people who do that. You say that you put people on your bell curve. And I have to give credit, Mike. I stole this whole thing from you, except we don't say steal anymore, right? We say harvest. Yes. I harvested this from you. And you need to justify that somehow. What are the observations you're making? What are the things that person is saying or doing that's leading you to the conclusion that they're just a pair of hands versus all the way in and completely engaged? Mm-hmm. And it kind of begs the question, right? Like, if you went up to them and asked them, what are you doing? What would they say?
Right. It's almost scary, just to think about. What are you doing? What are you doing here? What's the purpose? What's your purpose here at work?
Right.
And you can word it a few different ways, but the end result is, do they see this as just something they're doing until something better comes along?
Right.
Or is this a calling?
That calling is a wonderful word, but vocation, that's literally what it means, is to be called forth. Mm-hmm. There's got to be some purpose behind it if you're saying that, right? It's almost destiny, right? It's like there's a little element of divine to it. I have been called to this work. This is part of my purpose. Mm-hmm. There's something magical about that.
Yeah, people say, all the experiences in my life and who I am have brought me to this place at this point in time. exactly where I need to be.
Right.
Yeah, that you don't have to worry about that person calling in if they got a hangnail.
Right.
They're gonna make it in. They're gonna be there for you.
Yeah. You trust their work, etc. So, this is another question that I've used. I don't know if you use this, Mike, when you do it, but, just sort of what gets in the way of your people feeling like they are a part of something great? That third stonecutter, he's bought in. There is a huge, dare I say, eternal purpose to him cutting that stone. That tiny little act telescopes out to this big, gigantic thing with so much impact in the world. And that's amazing to have that insight. What are the things that get in the way of having that insight and being that bought in? So I don't know if you use that question, Mike, but I am guessing that you've heard lots of reasons for why that doesn't happen.
Oh yeah. I just had this just a couple of weeks ago. I was talking to a manager. Everybody in his department, they're paid, as individuals. There's no shared team framework. So as we're fond of saying here, right, structure defines behavior. So I've got a individualistic pay plan, and now I've got a whole bunch of people who are not working together as a team. And the manager was very distraught. He's like, they don't help each other. They don't work together. They don't solve problems together. And I said, all right, so what is your ultimate goal? What's your vision of the department?
Yeah.
Blank stare, right? And he says, I don't know. I don't have one. I said, what's your goal? What's your overall department goal? And he's like, he had something in mind. I said, is anybody in your department aware that's where we're going?
Yeah.
No. I said, so in the absence of anything bigger to focus on, what's left to focus on but my individual performance?
Right.
There is no common goal. There is no shared purpose. There is no vision.
Yep.
There is nothing for me to focus on. And so that was his goal, was to figure out, okay, what is this bigger thing that would cause people to put aside some of their petty differences and work together?
Yeah. So I heard two things there. One was having a goal, having some big purpose. The other was you probably ought to tell people whatever that purpose is. Communicate that.
Yeah. We talked about, gamification of work and showing progress towards a goal,
right,
and things like that. So, and that's very difficult to see, like at the beginning of the month, when everything is just starting off, it's hard to picture that we're going to have this incredible success down the road.
Right.
Probably one of the most amazing things when we were taking pictures like the cathedral behind me was that some of these took well over 100 years to build. And the average life expectancy was about 30.
Nobody saw the end of this thing.
Yeah. The guy, putting the foundational stones down, and he knew this starting off. He knew that not his kids would never go to a service in that church.
Yeah.
His grandkids possibly
would
go to a service in that church. But because the purpose was so grand and the mission so inspiring, they came to work every day knowing that that themselves and their kids would never see, partake of the fruits of this labor.
Yeah, it is an act of trust, right? To show up with a team and go through some motions that you're being asked to do, hand off some batons to some people that aren't you and are not under your control, and assume that this is all going to go towards an overarching purpose. I get it. Not everybody's building 100-year cathedral, but even in small ways, that's an act of faith. It's a moment of trust to do that work and stay engaged for the sake of something downstream.
Exactly. So one of the things, it seems so big and scary, right? Coming up with your purpose or your vision or whatever that. One of the simplest things that you can do there is just sit with your team and ask them the question, tell me about a time when you were most proud of our store, this department, our team, right? And just listen to those stories. Yeah. And you will find that every time you listen to a few of those stories, there's a common theme that weaves through them.
Yep.
The time that I was most proud was when we did X, and all of a sudden you're hearing versions of X everywhere, and all of a sudden that starts to form the basis of your purpose.
Yeah.
This is when I'm most proud. How do we do more of these things that make us proud? How do we celebrate those? How do we become more intentional about creating those? And then all of a sudden the purpose is clear.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you can go on a 3-day retreat and sit in a tent and take mushrooms. But the reality is, right, just starting with that simple exercise will take you a really long way to discovering your department, your team's purpose.
Yeah.
What makes them incredibly proud, what truly gets them engaged and giving freely of their discretionary effort.
Yeah, that's perfect. And we're going to put a handout made available in the show notes that you can, we'll have the link to. Another one of these exercises is just thinking through the value that you have brought as an organization, as a team. There's a number of different ways to think about that. It could be the product or service that you are responsible for. It could be the impact you have on employees, on the community, so on and so forth. So, we invite you to sit and think that through, and kind of related to the asking of your employees is thinking through for yourself, what causes you to go home and feel like you've made a difference? What turns the crank for you where you feel like you've really fulfilled something bigger than yourself in that moment? So we're giving you some ideas to sort of process this, to unlock engagement.
Yes, and these are big ideas and not something that can be done in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But there is with the questions that you've asked, there is a path forward.
Yes.
And so yeah, jump over to the link, grab the handout, start walking your way through these, engage your team in these conversations, and then ultimately, if you need help, call Max or Marty, Mike or Mark, and we can definitely give you some ideas on how to proceed to the next step.
That's perfect. And we have put some bullet points in the handout that talk about actual next steps. So again, we're just here. This is part of our purpose, Mike, right? Is we're turning a little bit of a crank here for ourselves, that we're throwing stuff out there that we hope really brings value. And I think you've got a rhyming phrase for what you're trying to do in the world. I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot here. I just realized what you came up with the JCs.
I don't know.
Lighten. Is it lighten and?
Yeah. That's my personal mission statement. So yeah, I will lighten and brighten the life of every person that I meet.
Yeah.
And by lighten, we mean, can I inform, educate, share something that I've learned? And brighten means, can't we just make it an enjoyable interaction?
Right.
And with that, I know exactly what I need to do every single day.
And I can be a witness to that's how you approach things. That's literally how you approach things. So anyway, with that being said, let us brighten our moods with John Wolfe, the world's greatest voiceover artist who has never been paid, except in our lauds.
He's worth every penny.
And that's a wrap. The musings of Mark and Mike. No rights reserved, etc. Feel free to share and discuss what you heard today. Even claim the ideas as your own. Who'd want to do that? See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius. Thanks.
That's good enough.